Welcome back to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. I'm so excited to be joined by Amy Wilhelmi, who certainly has a massive focus right now and an emphasis and has become the subject matter expert on mental health awareness for athletes, and certainly a very timely topic. But Amy, I'd love to start with getting to know you, the person behind the microphone, and your work. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I am a licensed mental health therapist. Technically, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. And then I also have a certification in divorce mediation. So that's kind of how I started in the mental health world. I own a large group mental health practice in the Chicago suburbs. I employ a bunch of therapists, and we see individuals, couples, families, and children. I've been doing that for about 7 years. The practice has been open. About 7 years, and what we do there is kind of typical mental health. You know, I take insurance, so we see clients through their insurance providers and are able to provide that service. I started working with athletes because I'm an athlete myself. I do competitive bodybuilding. So I am in the bikini division. And when I started doing that, I realized that there's this huge gap with mental health and athletes. You know, they have trainers, they have nutritionists, they have physical therapists, they have all these people around them. And then their mental health kind of goes by the wayside. And even if they were to seek services, the providers, most of them don't really understand that level of performance or that level of intensity. So oftentimes they would go to providers and the providers would be like, okay, well then maybe you should stop doing that. And
definitely. And Amy, I've seen so much in the news recently. Of course, Olympic gymnast Simone Biles, and of course, Olympic swimmer Michael Phelps. They've had their struggles publicized as they walked away from competition or turned to other ways to cope with that sort of next phase in their lives. I know you certainly can relate really, really well to them in all of your hats. Can you describe what they might be feeling or going through?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially both of those examples, you know, they've been in their sport probably for as long as they can remember, and it's their whole identity. And so it's kind of like a career pivot. It's along those same lines. It's like, well, I've been doing this thing for so long, and now what? You know, because I think that both Simone Biles and Michael Phelps, although top athletes, you know, it's going to end at some point. And then they kind of have this identity crisis of like, what do I do now? Or maybe I don't want to do this anymore. So now what? Right. And so that's kind of where I come in, as I work in that pivot zone. Also being a business owner and an entrepreneur, I understand it kind of from both sides.
Definitely. And we appreciate you sharing that perspective, which is great. So, you know, talking about some of those examples, and certainly in your description of your own background and why you're so passionate about this work, it's great. What would you say to people that are thinking of throwing in the towel, and whether that's certainly in athletics or even in business too?
Yeah, I think it's a very emotional process. You know, it's if you're an athlete, it's this, your whole identity, like I said, is this thing you built. It's your physical body that you've built to work so hard to do that. And if you're a business owner, it's a baby that you've built, right? An entrepreneur, something that you've built kind of from the ground up, and you've nurtured and you've cared for so long that it's like a grief process. It's like this huge emotional mourning of like letting go of that identity, but also just that baby, and then trying to figure out like who am I besides that? Who am I? What am I passionate about? What's next? What else can I do with these skills that I have? Because athletes are obviously highly skilled people, similar to military people, highly skilled people. But then they get out and they're like, what do I do? Right? So then we kind of work with that. Like, what are your passions besides this thing? What are your goals? What's your vision? What are your talents? And we take those pieces and I help them kind of rework that into next steps.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. Certainly, again, we're chatting with Amy Wilhelmi, a mental health professional, and certainly your background very, very diverse. And I know you're getting ready to release a couple of new books, Making Mental Gains and A Session Mentality. We're going to talk about that after a break. But just before we head to break, I am curious to just talk about mental health in general, as it's become I think, a more accepted topic. People take care of their physical health. Talking about mental health is important. Do you see these kinds of mental health services available in the education system in the near future?
Absolutely. I think that we don't have a choice. I don't have to say many words, but what's happening in our education system is scary. Students are feeling more anxious. They're feeling, schools are more dangerous than they ever have been, right? So luckily, education professionals are paying attention to kind of the social emotional well-being of students and incorporating that in their day. I actually have 5 kids. I have a blended family. So they do social emotional learning programming, even with the little ones. So I'm really proud of that. And then as far as the adolescents go and early college age students, they are very hip to mental health right now. And I'm just so proud of that. A lot of my clients actually are like in their young 20s. And I had an intake the other day and they were like, yeah, I'm not really sure why I'm, doing this coaching with you, except that I feel like it's something you should do. And I was like,
well, Amy, we've got to leave it there. We're going to come back in just a moment. I don't want to get caught off by a commercial, but when we come back, we're going to continue our conversation about mental health awareness with Amy Wilhelmi. We'll be right back and get down to business. You're listening to Get Down to Business, the show all about small business jobs and entrepreneurship. Again, I'm continuing our conversation with the one and only Amy Wilhelmi. We've been chatting about mental health wellness for athletes, but also sort of digressing that and bringing it into the business topics as well. Really, really timely. We've talked about a couple of examples of athletes and so on. So Amy, talking a little bit more about you as a licensed mental health therapist, what kinds of services can you provide to athletes who have lots of questions about their goals, directions, purpose, and of course, career pivots as well?
Yeah, so I provide one-on-one coaching, and then I also provide group coaching for teams. A lot of my athletes are referred to me by their coach. The coach is like, hey, this person's amazing on the field or amazing in the rink, but they're struggling. And so that's where a lot of my referrals come from. But then also I do, like I said, kind of like team mentality, team wellness, team mental health workshops and speaking events. I'm often hired by colleges and pre-professional programs to just come on in and, really make mental health kind of at the forefront instead of something that might be shameful or something that we don't talk about, because they really are starting to recognize that if the athlete's mental health is performing as well as their athletic ability, then they're actually going to get more out of their athletes. So.
Sure, very, very important. And just before the break, we were chatting about mental health services available in colleges in the near future. And I loved your very positive and forward-thinking outlook in terms of what's hopefully coming our way. And amen to that for sure. So just taking a step back in our last few minutes over here, I want to talk about some of the challenges that athletes, but young people in general face and encounter from an early age to adulthood and mature years. What are some of the things that our listeners should know and be aware of, whether it's in their professional lives, their personal lives, things that we should understand about mental health in general?
Yeah, I see a lot of kind of underlying anxiety issues that are not really addressed. And then a lot of just like self-esteem tied into that. So a lot of my programming is really reprogramming people to find their own self-love, their own identity, separate from their sport. If we're talking about athletes, if we're talking about people in general, though, it's like separate from their family of origins, separate from their background, separate from how they grew up, and really trying to say like, hey, you're your own person and you can do with your life whatever you want. And it doesn't have to be whatever your parents tracked you to do or whatever you believed that you can't do. So really
That's
a
great
lot
stuff.
of
So,
learning.
yeah, I want to make sure our listeners can get in touch with you and learn about your new books. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so you can go to my website. It's www.amywilhelmi.com. And the book Making Mental Gains is available on Amazon. I'm sure you can tag a link to that. And then Ascension Mentality is the bigger book, and that comes out hopefully in the next couple of months. It's in final editing right now.
That is awesome. Amy Wilhelmi, thank you so much for joining us. That's a wrap for us here on Get Down to Business, the show all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship. We'll be back next Sunday at 6 p.m. right here on AM 560. The Answer. You can always get on my website, shalomklein.com, or of course, download podcasts on your favorite podcast app. Just search for Get Down to Business. Be sure to check out our sponsors, Tom Mirabali from healthplanchicago.com. And he will give you a free quote, free consultation on everything Affordable Care Act and health insurance. Looking forward to those conversations. Again, get on my website, shalomklein.com. A great lineup today that we've had. We've talked all about succession planning, about the growth mindset. We've talked about leadership, and we've certainly talked about mental health. All such important topics. Again, get on my website, shalomklein.com. Amy Wilhelmi, thanks so much for wrapping up the show with us here today. And we'll look forward to being back next week. To success, let's get down to business. We are all about small business, jobs, and entrepreneurship.